Hello, my dear friends. In my channel, H&M Finance and Investment, we are going to today discuss about one of the important and most critical concept of the income tax is transfer pricing. And here, what transfer pricing is all about, and how the transfer pricing is regulated, and when the transfer pricing rules are applicable to an entity. So, transfer pricing means when an entity transfer or do any kind of a transaction with their counterpart associated enterprise in the form of sale, in the form of purchase, in the form of loan taken, loan given, advance taken, advance given, or any kind of transaction between the two associated enterprise. Here, in such a scenario, there are chances of tax evasion and also tax evaded in past. So government reviewed these transactions and government accordingly came up with the transfer pricing rules and regulation to curb such kind of transaction or to control such kind of transaction or even to avoid tax evasion that an entity performed through doing such transactions. So transfer pricing regulation in India apply when an assessee engage in international transaction with associated enterprise, or it also applies to specific domestic transactions exceeding rupees 20 crore in a financial year. Transfer pricing ensures transactions with the related parties are conducted at arm length price to prevent profit shifting. Basically, what happens, multinational companies shift their profit, and through shifting profit they evade tax. To curb such kind of practices, transfer pricing rules prevail in India. So transfer pricing here means how transfer pricing rules comply, what are the documentation requirement, and in international transaction, particularly if amount is exceed rupees 1 crore per transaction in a financial year, then transfer pricing rule applicable to such kind of entity. So what are the key applicable criteria? International transactions, domestic, specified domestic transactions, and what are the associated enterprise? These are the basic terminology that we are going to brief first. So here international transaction means a sale, purchase of goods, service, loan, intangibles, transfer between two associated enterprise. So this is the trigger point, and such kinds of transaction basically exist between two associated enterprise where at least one is a non-resident. Second one is associated enterprise. What is associated enterprise means? It is defined based on the capital, based on management and control, direct or indirect participation. So it can be associated enterprise can be understand through capital structure, through management, or through control. In Income Tax Act, you may refer the detailed definition about the associated enterprise, but here, due to shortage of time, I am just overviewing what associated enterprise is. Third one is specified domestic transactions. So it applies apart from international transaction, it also applies to specified domestic transaction as well. If transaction with the related parties exceeds rupees 20 crore in a year, then in that case also transfer pricing rules are applicable. So transaction with entities in specified notified area under the income tax also attracts transfer pricing provisions. So let us discuss something brief about documentation and compliance requirement in case of a specified in case of a transfer pricing. One is Form 3CEB. So Form 3CEB required to be filed with the income tax authority if transactions, international transaction exceeds rupees 1 crore or specified domestic transactions occur. Transfer pricing documentation. Transfer pricing documentation is mandatory if the aggregate value of the international transaction exceeds rupees 1 crore and specified domestic transaction exceeds rupees 20 crore between these associated enterprise. Now there is a concept called arm's length principles. So the income, the expenses must be calculated as if the transaction was with an unrelated party, typically using the arithmetic mean of the comparable price or range. There are a lot of methods that are given in the Income Tax Act. So, therefore, the transaction between the associated enterprise, whether in the form of revenue or expenses, need to be calculated using those methods. There are 4-5 methods that are prescribed, and then take the mean, arithmetic mean of those price to compare with the compare with the transaction with the unrelated party, so that there is a kind of confirmation that the company or entity is doing transaction with the associated enterprise at a arm length price or at a fair price. So there is no scope of tax evasion here. So there is an exception to this provision if the application of arm length price result in a lower taxable income or a higher loss in India. The regulation may not be invoked, as they are primarily designed to prevent erosion of the tax base. So there is an exception to it, means if the arm length pricing, as a result of arm's length price, there is a lower taxable income or a higher loss in India, so regulation may not be invoked in this case. So, for the businesses, for the entities, what is the key takeaway through this lecture? For any cross-border transaction with a related party or a domestic transaction with a related party exceeding 20 crore threshold limit in the form of transaction, they need to maintain detailed transfer pricing documentation, which is also what kind of documentation is required, that is also mentioned in the transfer pricing rules, and these documents are mandatory to be prepared in order to avoid the penalties prescribed under the Income Tax Act. So hope, my dear friends, this was just a brief about the transfer pricing. Though this topic is very large, so it's not possible to explain each and everything about this topic in 5 or 10 minutes span of time. It takes lot of time, lot of case laws are involved in it, lot of complexity involved in it, but my purpose is to just to brief you about what is the basics of transfer pricing. So these are the just basics information about the transfer pricing. Whenever we will feasible be able to provide you detailed lecture on transfer pricing, I will try my best in future. So hope you support my videos, give me any kind of inputs that you have, so that I can improve my videos, or if possible for you, not necessary, please, if you like my videos, please subscribe my channel, share my videos with your friend, family, and your professional fraternity. I will be very thankful. So with this, my dear friends, I end up my words, and soon we will be meeting, or we will be able to provide you few more best video about the taxation, finance and investment to the best of my knowledge and information. So goodbye, thank you very much.